Bonjour, Nindawe Magane Dug. Mano Geg Jeb is Ojibwe for good morning. My name is Tina Kukan Miller, and I'm the director of our Longhouse. Before I give a formal welcome to each and every one of you, it's a real honor and a pleasure for me to introduce my husband to you. This is Delbert Miller. His name is Smutkum. He's the spiritual father of the House of Shlanai, which is the traditional longhouse at Skokomish. And Delbert has been a part of this building and the work at this college since before many of us even knew about the Evergreen Longhouse. And it was his family, the Miller family from Skokomish, who led the blessing ceremony for the longhouse. And they brought the ashes from that traditional longhouse and lit the fire, essentially bringing the home to life. So there's a long history and legacy here. And, you know, I'm proud of Delbert for many things. Just to share with you briefly that 2 years ago, he was one of 5 artists in the nation to receive a Community Spirit Award from First Peoples Fund. This year, he's going to be working with the Hazel Pete family from Chehalis as part of a mentorship program through the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, and he's one of 11 artists in the nation who've received a fellowship to continue the important cultural and spiritual work that he does. So I'm really proud of him. You know, he's a carver, he's a singer, a composer, a drummer. He's a great grandfather, a wonderful father, and he's the love of my life. So please give a warm welcome to Delbert Miller.
Ai Chuluch, Supi Bias, the Ayus, Hakes, Jetsup Siayus. Kohitli schache, hat die schais, laubetila geel. Welcome everybody. For this truly could be a time, there are some in this room, could change your life. For we have to think about something, about listening. Are we listening to respond? Or are we listening to truly understand? For we have to realize something. We have to change a word. There's a word that we have to change. As I listened to the forest talk this morning, it said, when is it that we thought that we could consume everything without earning a right, without being responsible, without caring? And that why is it that we call ourselves a consumer society, to eat everything without having this respect, without earning anything? So that maybe we have to change the word of our society. We can no longer just continue to feast on everything. There comes a time when the life of the people turn, and that we just realize that we got to put our shoulder in and give back the sacred water, the sacred air, the sacred land, the life of the people out there. We have to give back, no longer just being consumers, eating and eating and eating without having earned anything. So listen to understand to this very significant time. Haiska, Haiska, everyone, thank you. Haiska, see ya.
Miigwech Smatkum. As the director of our House of Welcome, it's a real honor to welcome each of you today. I always like to introduce myself in my Anishinaabe language. Pushun and Dog. Greetings, my relatives. Bidana Kwadokwa Indigenous Cause, Wabusheshi and Dodim, Waswaganing and Donjaba, Ojibwe Anishinaabe Kwe and Dao. Mano Gigjeb Dongom. Good morning again. Thank you so much for being here for this really important event. We want to acknowledge those who work so hard to plan this, those who work so hard to support this, and every one of you for being here. You're here for a reason. And of course, we're here in the House of Welcome, Squeegwealt. If you haven't learned the name of the Longhouse, I'm going to teach it to you now. So I'd like you to repeat after me. Squeegwealt. Miigwech. The squeegwee references the gathering together of the people, and the alt is the home that we're finding ourselves in today. And this home is a beautiful place that came about because there was a strong visionary, Mary Ellen Hilaire of the Lummi Nation. She not only was the first female member of the faculty here, but she had a beautiful vision for a gathering place for people of all cultures. And of course, we all have ancestors, we all have heritages that we're celebrating. We bring those ancestors with us. And the building was given a name by our Northwest spiritual leaders that we consider pillars of our Longhouse. We met at Delbert's uncle's home, Bruce Miller, Sobier, and we were there with John and Edie Hadaway from Aka, David Whitener Sr. from Squaxin Island, Pauline Hilaire from Lummi. There are many people who worked really hard to build this building and to make that dream into a reality. Phi Hilbert Toxablu is another one of our pillars. Colleen Jolly is an alum from Evergreen who worked really hard to make sure that the building became a reality. So we're just taking note of all the people who worked really hard so that we could be here today to focus on this incredibly important topic of climate justice, because truly it's something that impacts us throughout the entire world. And there are certain buzzwords at different points in time, and I'm hearing a lot about Indigenous resistance and resilience, and those things are incredibly important. And we absolutely resist and are resilient to those forces that are seeming to come at us from every direction. But I also want to interject into that dialogue the concept of Indigenous persistence. My spiritual leader says, we are a determined people, and that is true. So I'm always interested in talking about how we act from our own sense of sovereignty, our own capacities, our own visions, and how we will work relentlessly to move those visions forward. So you're here today coming together around a vision of saving our planet, nothing less than that. What important work that is. So I think that the Longhouse itself is a testament to Indigenous persistence, those who worked really hard to build this building. We like to say here at the Longhouse that we're always visioning, we're still visioning, and what we're working on right now is the Indigenous Arts Campus. I'm mentioning this in part because you might notice some heavy equipment in the north part of the Longhouse. We're building the Indigenous Arts Campus here at the Evergreen State College. We've built a carving studio. What we're building now is the Fiber Arts Studio, a home for our weavers. And then we're going to build a bigger carving studio because the one that we have isn't quite big enough. And then we have plans in the future for a cast glass studio. So it is our persistence that is going to unfold the next iteration of the vision for the Longhouse, and that we're not doing that work alone. We're doing that work with support from Northwest tribes, many individuals who are giving that money into that blanket as they did for the Longhouse, many foundations. And I want to acknowledge the significant support of the Evergreen State College to build that weaving studio, and it's in large part due to the leadership of our new president, George Bridges. So I'd like us to acknowledge and thank George for the work that he did to secure the fact that we can have our weaving studio being built right now as we're sitting here. So it's an important time, and I hope that we all leave inspired and motivated. For me, I'm from the Great Lakes area, and my spiritual leader is Badwewadin Benesi from the Lakudere Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe. And in 2003, he talked to us at our ceremony on the Lake Superior shores, and he shared the water prophecy, and he said that within a short period of time, it's possible that only the very rich will be able to afford to have access to clean water. He said, unless mankind learns to change his ways, this is what's going to happen, and he shared what that water prophecy would be. And he asked each one of us, what are you going to do about it? And one of my cultural mentors, Grandma Josephine Mundaman, who some of you, I hope, have heard of, she thought, well, what can I do? I'm a grandmother. Well, I can take a step. And I can take another step. Grandma Josephine took a copper pail of sacred water and she walked around Lake Superior to draw attention to the need to protect our water. And then she walked around each of the Great Lakes, and then in 2011, we had a cross-continental walk from each of the 4 directions that ended up at Lake Superior, where we carried the salt waters from each of those directions and put them into Lake Superior. And then in a 2012 canoe journey hosted by the Squaxin Island tribe, we brought our precious water from Lake Superior, and other people brought their waters and commingled them here in the Salish Sea. And that's how we exercise our cultural sovereignty and our self-determination as people coming together around these really important issues. So to me, that's just such an inspiring story for someone to say, well, what can I do? I can take a step. I can take another step. So we're going to have a chance to hear from some frontline activists, people who are doing really important work, strong hearts to the front. Not all of us are able to be those frontline activists, but there are things we can do in our everyday lives, changes that we can make that will have an impact and will make a difference. So I think we all need to call upon our collective ancestors and continue on that journey with the faith that Grandma Josephine has as she walks around each of the Great Lakes. Today, she's literally enacting one of our prophecies where our people would go back along the trail, the St. Lawrence Seaway, back to the eastern seaboard where we originated, to find out what the ancestors left for us to find and pick up. And so today she's walking. She started at Madeline Island, and she won't give up until they reach that east coast. So that's a beautiful story of inspiration. And I know we're going to hear more stories of inspiration and engagement. And I just really thank each of you and welcome you for being here. We've got important work to do, and we'll do it together. Miigwech. Oops. I almost forgot to introduce the president of the college. Getting all wrapped up in my little speech making. So, as I indicated, Dr. George Bridges has done tremendous work for us as a leader of our institution and has provided a great amount of support for the Longhouse and the Native programs. So we're really honored that he is here to lead our institution. So please help me welcome Dr. George Bridges.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is great. What an opportunity we have to be together, students. I hope you enjoy the the sessions, the discussions, and we have so many welcome and important visitors. Tina, thank you for your inspiring leadership of the Longhouse and our Indigenous Arts Campus. I'm almost as excited as you are about it. No one could be more excited than you, and I think it's going to be a terrific addition to the college, to the community, to the world. And Delbert, for your leadership in the Skokomish Nation and people, thank you for your spiritual guidance and the many ways in which you support us in your art, in your in your song, and just in your participation. So thank you all for being here. The conversations that you will be having over the next few days will cover some of the most important issues of our time. I think it's not profound to state that climate change and climate justice are issues that surpass all issues that we face in our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren. These issues are critical, and we have many guests who have traveled far and near to attend this symposium, and we're honored by everyone's presence. Many of you who are here are heroes. Heroes to the faculty, heroes to the staff, heroes to the many, many individuals involved in climate justice, and all of you have something to teach us. We are all here to learn, and as you said, Delbert, so eloquently, learn to understand, not to respond. Understanding is the critical basis at which we must work. And I think it's fitting that this symposium is meeting here at Evergreen State College. We stand now here on the ceded territory of the Medicine Creek Treaty Tribes, which includes Squaxin Island, Nisqually, and Puyallup. And as a state institution, a public institution, we have a responsibility and an obligation to engage and consult with the Washington tribal nations on our educational work. It is part of who we are and part of what we must do. This is in keeping with the 1989 Centennial Accord, and the New Millennium Agreement of 1999. So Evergreen is very proud to meet that responsibility, to work collaboratively with tribal leaders, and embrace the obligation we have as a public institution on this land. Obviously, this work is well ongoing and part of an Evergreen tradition. The symposium is organized by the Climate Change and Pacific Rim Indigenous Nations Project that was founded at Evergreen in 2006, a very important part of our work. And its purpose, at least from what I understand, is to document the existing effects of climate change on Indigenous peoples here in the Pacific Northwest and in the Pacific Rim countries, to consider responses to fossil fuels and their effects, and to recommend future paths for Indigenous nations to respond to the climate crisis that we are now facing. This year, we have the good fortune of having the symposium co-sponsored by the Nisqually tribe. Thank you very much for your support, which also this Sunday is hosting a Youth Day for Climate Justice on the Nisqually Reservation. Very important indeed. The symposium itself that we will be sharing is hosted by the Evergreen program, Catastrophe, Community Resilience in the Face of Disaster. It's taught by 3 faculty members, Shangri-La Joshi Wynn, Christina Ackley, and Zoltan Grossman. Also on the organizing committee are other faculty members, Francis Rains and Deborah McNutt, as well as the Nisqually tribes, Hanford McLeod and David Stepetin. I believe firmly that the wisdom and knowledge of our Indigenous people, it's absolutely critical to understanding the impact of climate change, not just on their lives, but on the world, on our lives, all who live here. And what I would like to do is acknowledge the generosity you have shown to Evergreen students in our community for the ways in which we can learn. All of us will gain much from your presence here over the next 2 days, and we are deeply grateful for your participation. So we're all ready to listen and learn. Thank you very much for being here.
We'd like to welcome Lene Reed, a spoken word artist, poet extraordinaire from Olympia.
Good afternoon, Evergreen faculty, students, and visitors. It is lovely to see you today. My name is Lene Reed. I'm Choctaw, Creole, and my mom is as white as some of you are. I am a poet, activist, and spiritualist. I speak at lots of marches and rallies around here because I'm passionate about a lot of topics. The environment and spiritualism are the same to me as our activism. So the best way I speak is to do my poems. So the first piece I'm going to do is called Black Widow. There are some movements in it that call to mudras and goddesses, and it covers me processing so much of the things happening in the world with activism today. Oh yes, I'm a slam poet, so y'all can go, Get your snappers working. You go like stamp a little bit. Spit poet. You say spit poet? Spit poet. There we go, you got it, all right. Revolution of consciousness, circle of life, wheel of dharma, karma, center of the universe. We, threads of web intertwined. I, Black Widow. My thoughts, energy, express sound, wrapped around your ears. Here now, we share one memory. I find my mind wanders, I lose my ego, bye-bye, soul go fly, download, peace of mind. Manifest this inside, outside, up, down, revolution, round and round confusion, state of shock, genocide, murder. Stop the flood of blood in the streets, flow of traffic, stop the madness, shut down the racist, classist, prison industry, no more drug war, stop, break it down, build new. Revolution around town, small business down, hit by outsourced, offshore, downfall, resolution. Go green team, buy organic, local, weed, legalize cures we need, sacred pieces of Mother Earth gives birth to spirit I heed, air I breathe, earth I be, water my blood pumps, goddess I'm on fire. Resolution, spirit, freedom, rider, awareness, riser, higher, I'm up in the sky on cloud 9 where poetry bombs ignite, blow minds, and point expanse circumpunct Gaia cup. Filled with the sun, I stare at light and see the truth. This fights blindness, so when mindless guidance leads through the night. Rise in this darkness, see brightly, reflect like the moon. Nightly, ponder. Revolution, dominant submission, patent masters profit off your asses, taxes by war machines. Fuck politicians that trickle down, poverty goes around. Revolution. Idle no more. Get moving, rise up, lead yourself. Past this, go forward to revolution. Baltimore, slavery, Standing Rock, Wounded Knee. Justice and freedom need revolution. But I see bondage and chains wrapped around our brains. Resolution. Be free. Show solidarity. Palestine, Kenya, Syria, Unistoten, the whole world is talking revolution. So refugees, follow me to the sea level, global warming, rise up. Fukushima melts down. California dry up, go flames down, fall. Ashes to ashes, dust to. Revolution serves carcasses, children, porpoises, growler bears, nowhere, glaciers splash, iceberg crash, Titanic sinking, downfall. Revolution around pollution, repelling off bridges, kayaktivists, stop drilling! Oil rig explodes, coal train rolls, cargo, dark clouds go up, chemtrails spray downfall. Pain and strife. Resolution, revolution, web of life holds everything in balance, just like karma. Wait and see. Watch now, Fuck me, I am Black Widow. Thank you. Yes, so I had the honor to go to Standing Rock briefly, to be present and attend and to give them energy. And it was the most life-changing experience I've ever had. To say the prairie blew through my soul is an understatement. To witness the resolve of people who are so sure in their soul that what they are doing is right and that it is peaceful was beautiful to witness. I wanted to bring my daughter and make sure that she was present for that. Missing school, that was fine. That was wonderful. It was the best learning experience I could have given her. So prioritizing my daughter's education and my life and what I want to give my energy to is important to me. And that should also be important to you. There are lots of ways that you can get involved in your community and to give time and money to people doing all kinds of work around here. So I had the honor of hearing Chase Iron Eye speak from the Sandy Rock Sioux tribe. And he speaks about everyone being indigenous. White people are indigenous to somewhere. So remember, this is your planet, and you belong here, and it's your water, and it's your air, and it is sacred. Everything is connected. You see, we do not need 10 commandments. No, just this, one truth. There are no divisions. We are one. One mind, body, soul, life, planet. Just one. So this is my plea, this is my cry. If you do not understand, I cannot tell you why. It is the ground under my feet and my eye in the sky. I am one. When you see your brothers and sisters and you say, hey, how you doing? Are you good? Remember, we are one. We all need something like the truth in the center of all the spokes in a wheel, surrounded in hope and love. I honestly see we are one. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red, gay, straight, queer, square. We are all eating from the same plate and sleeping in one bed. When you think of each other instead of fear, accept each other as one. When you see a sick puppy or a wolf pack on the attack, why stay back? Can't you see? We are in one condition and behave as one. Look at us and yourselves in the mirror, because everything is one. There are no enemies in one. There are no fences, cells, prisons, walls. They're all just a dream, an illusion. We are one. I am one. You are one person with one perspective and will and tongue, born at one time from Mother Earth. If you seek the truth, then you are one. If we'd all love our enemies, there would be none. Are you one? There are no enemies in one. One mind, body, soul, life, planet, just one. We are one: Christian, Muslim, Jew, animist, humanist, atheist, Hindu, pagan, Wiccan, Zen Buddhist too. Agnostics are ahead of me here. Y'all knew there might be one. And here it is, because we are one, seeking truth, wisdom, and honesty, understanding, acceptance, and forgiveness, praying, meditating, and debating. Who has the best answer? How to attain nirvana? Will I be accepted in heaven? Are we separated by love, people? What are we arguing about? Whatever it is, I am sure of this, the answer is we are one, like one truth in the center of all the spokes in a wheel, surrounded in hope and love. I honestly see we are one. Preacher and sinner, one. Cops, robbers, judges, prisoners, one. Dealers, addicts, bloods, crips, hoes, and pimps, one. Soldier, general, president, pope, one. Kings, queens, and refugees, one. Oppressors and oppressed, one. Rich and homeless, one. Can't you see? Our temple, that is we. Let us be at home as one. It is no coincidence in spirituality throughout the world that goddesses like Oshun and Aphrodite are the feminine representation of Mini Wichoni. Water is life. Water is love. Water sustains everything. Everything is water. Everything is every sacred element. So I've done a lot of marching and speaking at rallies. The next thing I am doing is organizing Witches March. We are marching for religious freedom and the environment. Getting witches to agree is like herding cats, and we can agree on those two things. There is no difference. The environment and spirituality, there is no difference to that. If you do not worship water, then you are not worshiping yourself or honoring yourself, because you are mostly water. It is not an argument of what you believe, if you are Native, if you are Celtic and a witch, if you are Christian and baptized in water. None of that matters. It is sacred. And we really must focus. We argue about so many things, whether it's religion, the environment, rioting, what we should do. Well, we should agree on what is important. We have to agree. We have to agree that water is important for our children and our grandchildren. We must. So, we are one. My name is Lene Reed. I welcome you to speak to me after this with any questions. And I have a book called Universal State of Mind that one is in, and that is my message to you. The environment is your soul. Thank you.
Halito, Osio. My name is Frances Rains, and I am Choctaw, Cherokee, and Japanese. I am a Native faculty here at Evergreen in the Native Programs Department area, and I am here this morning, and it is my honor to introduce the first panel of our second annual Indigenous Climate Justice Symposium. Here we have today a panel on youth and climate and the climate crisis that'll focus on the role of Native education and the role of youth in protecting the land and water, with a special look at the Lummi homelands. Becky Kinley and the Lummi Youth Canoe family, would you come on up? These Lummi youth who believe that cultural identity teaches and sustains them for tomorrow and today, for today and tomorrow, with the guidance of their elders who have taught them Lummi values and disciplines. Through integration of the canoe, they have been able to find a sense of belonging. They have defined meaning, not to only empower themselves, but to also help those around them. The Lummi Youth Canoe family meets weekly to do cultural activities that prepare them for the annual Intertribal Canoe Journey hosted in July. Activities include, but are not limited to, hands-on cultural arts, language, gathering and preserving of natural resources, advocating for rights as Lummi people, engaging in community service opportunities, and participating in national and international cultural exchanges. They started with a small group of 5 and have grown now, serving nearly 80 members over the last 5 years. Those who meet the age limit of the program take with them invaluable skill sets, knowledge, goal setting, and experiences in preparing them for future challenges. Many of these graduates apply for scholarships and plan future careers in vocational and professional careers. They offer young people alternatives to dealing with the various types of mental health issues that, other than using drugs and alcohol. Under the direction of the Lummi Behavioral Health Division and the Lummi System of Care Extension, the Canoe family receives guidance in helping to reduce mental health stigma through the intergenerational teachings from their elders. Starting in 2007, these youth have traveled in 7 canoe journeys, and they have started to travel the Pacific Rim in cultural exchanges so that they can understand the success and struggles that other Indigenous communities face in comparison to our community. And I will allow Becky Kinley to introduce each of the members individually because because she just will. So, and then I'll introduce the next speaker.
Asian Strelicha Siam, Itza Salauluch, Itza Si Atlam, Outsin Kachitsa Klamitrasin, I Utatasin, Twanis Panal, Niskli, Quanisqual, Quaquino Squal, Tia Squal. Hi, my name is Nicolas Arivi. I'm from the Lummi tribe, and we are the Lummi Youth Canoe family. And I'll let Becky come up here to introduce everybody else.
Thank you, Nikki. My name's Rebecca Kinley. For those of you that don't know me, I only see a few familiar faces in the crowd. I think it's important that it's not me as their leader speaking, it's our children speaking, because that takes and shares a powerful message to everyone around us, especially if we're live streaming the event or people are coming back. It's not about Becky talking, it's about our children talking. But I just wanted to allow the kids to come up and introduce themselves. They're a little bit different than the agenda. Some of our kids are in college and they have just started the quarter, so. Kira?
Hi, my name's Kara Claire. I'm from the Lummi tribe. I'm also part of the Lummi Youth Canoe family.
OCM Nichelle Chetsiam. My name is Tara Lynn Giona. I am from the Lummi Youth Canoe family. I am a representative of the Lummi tribe. Thank you.
So thank you. And I wanted to introduce our other speaker this morning. We are very fortunate to have Michael Vendiola come speak with us today, and he is an enrolled member of the Swinomish tribal community and has Lummi and Visayan Filipino ancestry. He is a program supervisor for the Office of Native Education within the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction here in Washington State. His office coordinates, since time immemorial, the curriculum now mandated in Washington schools. He has a master's degree in adult education administration from Western Washington University and is completing his EDD degree in educational leadership and policy studies in the University of Washington. He has played a leading role in student recruitment and advising at Western Washington University, Northwest Indian College, and Skagit Valley College, and has managed Swinomish communications. So please welcome Michael Vendiola. Yeah, and you, and we're ending at 12:30, so we want to make sure we can cut it in half.
Sure. Gualapo TD sheds chel araque di chu. Hot data still morning time. Good morning to you. And I'm just up here smiling because what a beautiful day it is. And it's so great to be on this panel with the Lummi Youth Canoe family. And we spent some time this last Saturday where we were, where they opened up the People's Climate March up in Bellingham. And so it's a great honor to be standing with them again. And I want to raise my hands to Tina and Delbert for opening the floor, and our spoken word, Lene. Thank you so much for those good words for opening up the floor, and our president. And I also wanted to acknowledge our tribal leaders that are in the audience, Tyson Johnston, our vice president from Quinault Indian Nation. I'm not sure if there's any other council members here, but definitely welcome you and thanking you for being here. And also raising our hands to Squaxin Island, Skokomish people, and all of our Straits and Coast Salish tribes in the area for allowing us to have this space to do this good work. Thank you, Zoltan, for the invitation. as well. And I also wanted to acknowledge that I'm a relative of Mary Ellen Hilaire. As the words were spoken earlier about this house, it was a great vision that she had when she was a student here, and then she became a faculty member. I'm saying this mainly for the two that are here on the panel. Two of the panelists were relatives from the Hilaire family, Haytaluk, and Mary Ellen was my aunt and probably their grand aunt. So what an honor it is to be here today to represent for our family, and especially for Mary Ellen. I used to hear the good stories from my Aunt Pauline Hilaire about her sister Mary Ellen making the drive from Lummi Nation, which is near Bellingham, to come down here to go to school, and what a commute that was. Traffic probably was not as bad as it is now, but still a tremendous effort. I remember thinking, wow, that's incredible. How could you do that? And so now I work for the Office of Native Education, which is a part of OSPI, which is based in Olympia, and I still live up in Lummi, so I'm doing the same thing that my auntie did. Fortunately, I just come down here for the week and then drive back home. But still, what an honor it is to be in this house and remember her good work. So I'm going to start talking about, and pardon my, has anybody, where's the natives at? Raise your hands. Want to acknowledge the natives that are in the house. And so I want to explain something that's very precious to me that I like to use in my presentations. It's called Indian humor. And so please do not be caught off guard by my Indian humor. And my good friend Roger Fernandez talks about the content of a joke. And does anybody know what the content of a joke is? This is you'll love this. You'll tell all your friends this. The content of a joke, and Roger Fernandez is Lower Elwha Sklallam tribal member, great storyteller, and so he taught me that a joke is a story with a surprise ending. Isn't that cool? You're going to remember that forever. You're going to tell your mom tonight or whoever. So I like to do that. I like to use jokes and Indian humor and point out the cool things in life and use them as teaching tools. So pardon that. I'll just say that up front. So I work for the Office of Native Education. We do a couple initiatives within the state in regards to Indian education. One of them is the Since Time Immemorial Tribal Sovereignty in Washington State curriculum. Has anybody heard of that? Raise your hands up and high, nice and proud. Any teachers that are in the room that might have used it? All right, so good. Any folks who want to be teachers in the room? All right, good. So this might be something that you use in the future. And I was thinking of the good words that were shared from Lene about being a spiritual activist, that our activism and our spirituality really are one with one another, and I really appreciate that, because that's some of the things that we're trying to do with education as my role as a Swinomish Indian tribal community member working for the state. And so if you can think about that, those two entities haven't always come together in a meaningful way throughout history. At times there's conflicts or disagreements, and there still is those things. And so my role as a Swinomish Indian tribal community member is to really be thoughtful of our teachings and our ways of knowing as Indigenous people. And then as my role in working for the state and being inside of an institution is to try to figure out how to move past providing equality and move past providing equity and get to liberating. How do we liberate education so that our perspectives are represented, our perspectives in our case as Indigenous people are represented in the school curriculums? And so I'm very blessed because there have been people who've worked really hard to provide the state the tools to create the Since Time Immemorial Tribal Sovereignty Curriculum, which is essentially trying to liberate education. And there's two approaches to it. One is to improve the success of tribal students who go to school in public schools. And so when you look at education, it's what we call a treaty obligation. It's something that we agreed upon as Native people that the federal government would provide us as a part of our treaty rights. The second approach is for the non-tribal folks. So for the state of Washington, OSPI is driven to provide education for all the students within the state of Washington, K through 12. And so that's where the liberatory work lies for me as well, is that to teach about tribal history, culture, and government in the public schools is to teach about Washington state history. And it's not a separate thing, it's one and the same. And as we heard from the opening remarks from the president, he talked about what kind of things can the tribes provide, the key things that the knowledge that tribes have to address some of the issues that are going on in our world today. And so that's kind of the big roundabout. That's what Native people do. We do the whole roundabout and come to the point. And that's why I'm here today to present to you, is to talk about this tribal sovereignty curriculum and how it could address the issue of climate change. So I'm going to get into it. So one of the things that we need to look at is what's currently being taught in schools. Well, here's my take on it. Treaty obligation meets tragic education policy. And we see it, it's humorous to us, and we laugh because our reaction is one of surprise. That when we actually think about the type of education that was provided to tribal students over the long period of our agreement, it has not been a successful implementation. And so I put the little asterisks about, the little asterisks is near the treaty obligation. And treaty obligation, when we look at agreements between the state, and not to get too far into legalese, but our agreement with, not our agreement with the state, our agreement with the federal government happened in 1855. That's most of the folks that are sitting up here and all of our Northwest tribal members created these agreements back in 1855. Well, when we look at this, when the state of Washington was established, it was established in what year? Anybody? Quiz. 1979? No. Oh, okay. Oh, 1889. Okay. Yes, that's right. 1889. So Treaty of 1855, was signed in 1855. States established in 1889. So much after the treaty creation, the state was formed. So our agreements between the tribes and the federal government precede the state of Washington. So they have a precedence, so to speak. So when we compare it to a very poor educational policy, you could see why we have this urgency. Here's more of what, talking about the first prong that I mentioned about what's the state of education for tribal youth. So when you look at across the state, the United States of America, we have a study that was done by Dr. Sarah Shear called Manifesting Destiny, Representations of Indigenous Peoples in K through 12 U.S. History Standards. 50 states, all states reviewed. Right off the bat, 27 states don't even mention Native Americans in their state standards. That's more than half of the states. I can, I have really no idea why that is. But the second part, 87% teach about Native Americans in a pre-1900 context. Who's from Washington? Raise your hand. And did you learn about Native Americans in your schools at all? A little bit. I like that. That really helped me out. Right there, that's the scale. Right? That's the scale. And what you probably learned was similar to what's stated here. So this is stating the obvious. Pre-1900 context, we don't learn about Natives in a contemporary context in our educational system. Fortunately, in the state of Washington, though, as we're turning the corner, we're part of the, what is the math? 13%. That's why I'm in education, not mathematics, okay? So 13% that is providing a different take on Native history and culture. So this was awesome. Okay, kudos to the president of Evergreen. I think he left already. But he actually knows about the 1989 Centennial Accord, which is quite incredible. It's an amazing document. If you ever have a chance to go take a look at it and read it, it's very worthwhile. If you have any interest in understanding how tribes and the state can work together, this is the document to read. And in that document, it was actually created in 1989 as a part of a gathering between the tribes and Governor Booth Gardner and all of the tribal liaisons that work within the state institution or agency. And one of the areas they tackled was education, but they tackled many areas like natural resources, health and human services, what else? Early learning, kindergarten, Head Start. And so one of the areas of education, they mentioned this right here, which says comprehensive educational effort to promote understanding of the government-to-government relationship. And that's what a honor it was to hear the president of Evergreen mention this document specifically and this particular statement come from an administrator, lead administrator of an institution, because that was the vision in 1989. And he also mentioned the Millennium Agreement. So in the Millennium Agreement, it begins to articulate what exactly should we be teaching about in regards to Native people in the Northwest or in Washington State. So I highlighted, there's a lot of text there, but I highlighted the areas that are very specific, and this becomes the language within the legislative laws that come forward. Tribal history, culture, treaty rights, contemporary tribal government. That becomes the essential part of what we should be if we're going to have a curriculum or have information taught about tribal people. The leaders of the state of Washington and the leaders of the tribes decide that these are the priorities. So in 2005, we have a House Bill 1495, that comes forward, and it encourages Washington's tribal history, culture, and government to be taught in the common schools. So it's on the books. It's a law. A memorandum of agreement is created with the 29 tribes between the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, the State Board of Education, and the Washington State School Directors Association, cementing this partnership. And that's one of the things, it's really important that our partnerships need to be, like I think the story behind all this, our partnerships need to be healthy. So it can't be just only focused on, can you sponsor this event? Can you provide money for this event? But what is the real health of our relationship? So this MOA kind of articulates that. And then as a result of the law, we create what's called the Since Time Immemorial Tribal Sovereignty in Washington State curriculum. In 2015, the law is updated because the legislature kind of looks at what's the impact of encouraging school districts to teach about tribal history, culture, and government. Well, the response is we haven't had much success because school districts aren't really adopting it. And so the legislature comes back and says, well, we're going to mandate it. We're going to require the teaching of tribal history, culture, and government. It's important to note that the curriculum is a tribally vetted curriculum. It's Common Core aligned. If you're familiar with Common Core, it's free and it's online. So it's very groundbreaking back in 2005 to have that those check marks along that list. And as I mentioned, it provides more of a balanced history of the state of Washington. And I'm so excited to be sitting up here. Canoe Journey is coming up. So some of the canoes are like waking their canoes up and they're out on the water. And I just, my family, and I want to acknowledge my wife, Michelle, who's in the audience today. She came down to heckle me, I guess. And then she's here. But our family has traveled on the Canoe Journey a few times. We paddled out here to Quinault. That was such a beautiful gathering. We came to Squaxin Island when they hosted. We've hosted at Swinomish. And it's unbelievable. If you have an opportunity to go, you should go. At least, check it out. But our canoes are waking up now, and I'm hoping I'll get a chance to go on a pull with the Lummi youth canoe. But they, when we talk about a more balanced history of Washington State, we could look at something like the Canoe Journey as really something that is so enriching and can provide our youth a real focus. And you're going to hear this from them. But in the Canoe Journey, there's really, from my point of view, there's 3 stages to it. It's like your preparation, you're getting ready. We're like in this time right now where we're getting excited. Like Canoe Journey is going to be happening soon. We start thinking about our songs and our dances and the things that our language and what we're going to share, because along the way, so like say Squaxin Island was going to host and we're coming from Lummi. Squaxin Island is not the only host, but every tribe in between Lummi and Squaxin Island will host. So we'll get in our canoe and we'll paddle south, and we'll wind up at Swinomish at my tribe, and they'll host Lummi and all the other canoes who are from up north, and all the way down to Tulalip, Suquamish, Puyallup, Muckleshoot. Then we'll wind up here at Squaxin Island, as an example. So at each of those stops, we ask for permission to come ashore. We share songs. We share a lot of food, lots of eating going on, and lots of stories. And so the preparation, though, is key. We go out. We know we're going to have to give gifts as we go along. So we go out and we know how to work with the cedar or our vine maple. We make baskets. We make gifts. We make blankets. We weave. We do all these things. And what a tremendous education that is for our youth to be able to be taught by our weavers and our basket makers and our hunters and our fishermen. And then as we're on the paddle, it's another stage in our life where we learn, as Delbert was talking about, are we able to listen to understand? And that's the biggest lesson I learned on the Canoe Journey, is because when you're out there, it's just the 9 of you who are out there. There's 8 paddlers, 1 skipper, and if you're not able to listen to one another, you're not going to be very successful. And if you have a 150-mile pull, that could be very difficult for you. And then when you land at the host, you begin to, you have to share your songs and your stories. And as we opened up with, we have our speakers. They come forward and they speak in the language and they share Estitum Son. They do the best that they can. They do as best they can to represent themselves, their family, and their community. That's the vision. I don't even need to do the rest of the PowerPoint. I'm just so excited just about sharing that. But that's really, what our vision is for teaching about tribal history, culture, and government in the state of Washington. So we're looking forward to that. I'm looking at the time. You said, is my time up? Okay. All right. Keep going. One person said they wanted more, so I'm just going to keep going. It doesn't matter whether you want. So there's some exciting things about the curriculum. We have some innovations and some implementation and some future. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And so one thing to note is that this curriculum is really unique. So it's like one of the few across the country. Montana has one. Oregon State is about ready to pass one that's modeled on our model. Wyoming is also looking to pass a law that will teach about tribal history, culture, and government. So we're doing a lot of consultation across the country to talk about how to make this happen, presenting at conferences like the Washington State Indian Education Association, National Indian Education Association, and other places. And as an offshoot of the curriculum itself, we see institutions of higher learning taking the curriculum and putting it into the structure that they need to meet the needs of their students. So at the University of Washington, they've created a Native Education certificate program. And I think I just want to read the description because it's really indicative of place-based or community-based learning, which is essentially what things like the Canoe Journey are about. Courses are designed to cultivate the educator's ability to create meaningful and effective relationships with Native American students through a perspective of being a community-based teacher. So it's awesome to have the partnership with the University of Washington to take the curriculum and mold it into the structure that they need. And we also have a new curriculum that's based on the since time immemorial. It's Tribal Sovereignty Early Learning Curriculum. And it was a partnership between the First Peoples First Steps Alliance and the Puget Sound Educational Service District Native American Early Learning Project. And they created 3 pilot lessons adapting STI for the early learning community. Now that sounds cool, but imagine trying to teach little 3 to 5-year-olds about tribal sovereignty. And that's what those lessons do. They're really trying to think about imparting our young ones with the concept of sharing and what does tribal sovereignty mean, right? So that's a tremendous effort there. We have our websites here, and I had intended to kind of jump into one of the curriculums, but I don't have. I only have this thing, so which has a laser. That's cool, but the early learning curriculum is broken into 3 lessons where we talk about self, the home of the salmon, and a 3rd lesson that talks about essentially about sharing and what does that mean to kind of share our space with the salmon and self. So lots of good things to think about for this. Lots of implications and applications. And so anybody who's interested, please come up and let's talk. So that's about it for me. I had a joke. I forgot what it was going to be, but I'll try it. You probably won't like it. Is that the worst setup for a joke ever? Okay, here we go. It's a knock-knock joke. Okay, we'll try it. Oh man, I'm not sure if I remember it now. Okay. Okay, knock knock. Interrupting. Wait. Okay, I gotta start over. Okay. Somebody sneezed. Okay, it's got to be quiet in here. Okay, knock knock. Interrupting Evergreen student. Peace.
So what I'd like to offer you as an opportunity to do is to hear the youth first, and then we can ask questions, have a question-answer session for everybody. Is that all right? So, because I want to honor their presence as well. Okay, so thank you. Becky, you can take it away.
Does this mic work? Can you guys hear me? I just want to put my hands up to Michael. I really appreciate his guidance. He was actually there for me when I was in high school. I think, and his brother Rudy too. So I've always really appreciated the Vendiola family, and I'm excited that we're sitting on the panel together. I kind of just wanted to share a story to bounce back from what Michael shared about education and culture, and the lady that shared the poem. I was a freshman in high school attending a public school right off the reservation, and I sat there and I told my teacher I'd rather get an F than learn non-Native American history. And I went to the Ferndale School Board and I told them I'm insulted because I didn't know who I was, and my dad couldn't teach me because he wasn't raised in the culture. I was like, how dare you take away my right of knowing who I am? I felt like a nobody. I felt like a non-Lummi being a Lummi tribal member. So I do think the work is important. I do think that it's also been able to build a foundation for the work that the youth are currently doing. So like Francis said, we're the Lummi Youth Canoe family. We started in 2013. It's me and a really good friend of mine, the late Justin Finkbarner. Me and him just started working together, and we got a canoe, and we had no idea what we were doing. And I went to the Vendiola family and the Lummi Cedar Project, and they just kind of helped us build what we needed to do. So what makes the work I do just a little bit different is I work with kids that have mental health stigmas. So the kids that have high anxiety, the kids that have depression, the kids that have low self-esteem, the kids that have potential. So these kids, whether they be excelling in a linear education system or not, they were brought forward to me by the Spirit. And then we just started working on arts and crafts. So I've been a student of our cultural arts for about 15 years. I know everything from weaving to beading to just about everything besides the language. I can't speak it. That's how come I have our kids do it, because I'm still learning. And that takes a lot of time and patience. So we just started working on giveaways, and I think the first year we started, we made 600 giveaways in 3 months. I was really determined. And I made them determined too. And Paddle to Quinault was our first canoe journey as a family, and I think over 120 Lummies came. And it was remarkable because it was also my first time managing it. They're like, okay, Becky, it's gonna be you. And I'm like, great. So they loaded up my Visa One card, and I was in charge of everyone, it felt like. And I think I laugh about it now, but man, it was like roller coaster. And that year, I think we had about 20 people come from Maui. So they reached out to us and they said, we want to go on canoe journey. And we're like, oh, awesome. We're like, well, if you come on canoe journey, we want to go to Hawaii. And they're like, heck yeah. So that's what happened. And that's how we started coming up with real life goals. We wanted to be valued. We wanted a sense of belonging in our community. We wanted adults to actually listen to us. And so then we just started having these conversations, and then council would come in and listen to us, and then elders would come and teach us. And that's actually where I want our kids to step in, because it's about their experiences and what they're learning about how they're empowering other people. And then, and I wanted to sneak peek in tomorrow, but page 2 is Paris, okay? So today we're just gonna talk about canoe journey, culture, arts.
Is this on? Mm-hmm. Okay. Hi, my name is Nicola. So like I said earlier, I was actually one of the first youth that started off with Becky before the canoe journey part. We started off as a small group, and Becky knew nothing about culture. I taught her pretty much a lot of the stuff she knows now. I was fortunate enough to grow up with parents that are culturally active, so our first year on canoe journey was when we went to Quinault. We didn't know a lot of stuff. It was my first year too, because I never went with the canoe family, and I never thought I would get out there and pool.
See, Nikki's lucky because she's my second cousin. So she's always just like, it's funny. Go ahead.
That year, back in 2013, when I went to Quinault, helped me connect with our culture and our people, like Coast Salish people, a lot more, and like show me that there is more than what the school just shows us. Like, I've never got like experience like learning the language because we've never had a language teacher at our tribal school. So, what else happened? I can't look at her. It's and then when our late canoe skipper, Justin Finkbonner, he had connections all around the world, basically. And he had a good friend in Maui when we did a culture exchange. They started in La Push with us because when they flew in, and they've like taught us a lot of their song and dances, and like I've never knew nothing. Like I was like, whoa. And I didn't even know that there was the Northwest Indian College. They had a canoe that came along with us, and their skipper spoke the language really well. And since that year, I've taken the time out of my life to sit down with him privately just to learn the language, because we've never had a teacher that taught us, and I was desperate to learn the language. Cause like it took a lot of time and practice because it's really like tongue twisting. And our next canoe journey was to Bella Bella. Yeah, I was the only one that went with. We were only able to take 25 youth because we didn't have enough adults to cross the border to help watch us. And yeah, we have Becky, and she didn't know nothing. She didn't like listening to directions either, and got us lost every stop we went.
Have faith in the driver, Nikki.
That year, we pulled with the Oliver Canoe family. They're from down in Seattle. Like, they live down in Seattle, but they're Lummi. They joined with us, and we pulled to Bella Bella, and we stayed there an extra week because we forgot to book our ferry to come home. And it's really small, and you like have to have book ahead of time. So instead of going back south to come home, we went up north and met some Belaculas. And we stayed there a few days, and we got to learn about their culture. When we're there, I've realized how different, like how similar, but how different our cultures are. And being able to be a part of this canoe family helped me learn way more about Native American history and being able to connect with other people. Because before I joined this group, I was really antisocial, and I had maybe 2 friends, and I've never gone out anywhere. And then when did we go to Muckleshoot? When did we go to Muckleshoot? What? When did we go to Muckleshoot? What?
2015.
2015. They wasn't really a canoe journey, so we had a youth journey where the youth took role and led the whole journey. That year was our last year with our skipper, and that's the year that he's helped us go to Paris and fight for climate change and go protest. That year, I've never experienced so much pain in my life. But our skipper has taught us and learned with us so much about our culture and to connect with nature and be out there. He taught me so much about how much Earth means to me and to us. Like, if it was like, with him, he's the reason why we started going out to the protest to save Mother Earth, or to leave the message, Earth is alive, that us youth are the future generation, so we need to go out there and put a stop to everything to save Earth.
I think sometimes it's hard to put our emotions into words when the trauma is still very vivid and alive within ourselves. The kids, I keep bringing it back, the kids that we've taken on these trips have had they've had stories of pain and loss with no direction. And going back to what Michael says, we're trying to fit a circle community into a very square and linear formatting. That doesn't work for us. And for someone to tell you that you have to learn that way, they're wrong. These kids, through being involved in the canoe, through the gathering of the plants, through learning the language, through getting up and speaking and just sharing a part of them with you, has brought them more further into reaching their own goals. When I first met these kids, they had none. They were gonna stay under res, they were, or maybe they wanted to go off to college, but they didn't get good grades, how are they gonna fund that? So when you don't have that sense of direction and you don't have that support that you need to be successful, then you just turn to what everyone else is doing. Teenage pregnancy, drugs and alcohol, making it so that you put other people that are excelling down. So, and that's something that even I faced in my childhood that I grew up with. But I told someone I didn't care what they thought of me. It only mattered what I thought of myself and where I was gonna go. So, Tara didn't join us until 2014. And Kara has been here forever, but she just never went on canoe journey. I do want to allow them to speak a little bit more, but I just want to kind of reiterate, what Nikki's message was and let her know that everyone in this room supports the feeling that comes behind this and that it is powerful. And Justin was the one that taught us to stand up for what we believe in. One day we got on our canoe and we were polling and the kids were like, Justin, why is it on Lummi Island there's no trees? There's this big rock area. And then he sat there and we got to shore and Chief Bill James was with us and he said the entire story of why there was no trees. And we'd go up to the mountains and there'd be like chunks of trees gone. We're like, is the same thing on Lummi Island the same in our own mountains? When we go gather cedar, there'd be too much cedar gone. Like people would take more, end up killing our trees. Like cedar heals itself. That's medicine, not just to us as indigenous people, but all. So we started connecting a lot of dots. The kids also were able to participate in the teachings and the learning of the reef net canoe. And that ties in directly with Kuchiakin, Cherry Point. We didn't put a dollar amount on our ancestral territory. We stood up for our cultural value. When I hear Michael say tribal sovereignty in like youth terms, that is what we value. That's what you value. Like we value water. Water is sacred to us. Gathering off the land is sacred to us. Like why would we want to sell that for something that might not even be there later? Like money. So I just kind of want Tara to give a testimony and Kira, and then probably be time for a wrap up. Tara, go ahead. You got the mic.
Okay, well, my name is Tara Lynn Giona, and I ended up starting in 2014. It was actually for the reef nets. I started because of the retreat after Bella Bella, and their retreat was connecting with the reef nets. And we went over to the San Juan Islands, and I didn't really know anything about my culture. I was suffering from depression and anxiety, right? So my mom was telling me, she's like, oh yeah, it's a great opportunity for you to go out. And me, I kind of shut myself out, and I didn't want to go. And it just kept going on and on like that, and I had 3 people ask me until I finally said yes. So when I ended up going, I wasn't really interested in it to begin with until we started singing. And it was at that moment where I connected with my culture. And then I just fell in love, and I never quit. And that's actually why I'm here today, is because I am in love with my culture. I learned that us as Native American people, we need the earth. It is a huge part of us, and that's actually one of our major parts in our culture, is we give what we take. So when we take something, we'll give it back to Mother Earth. That is how we connect. And with that, it's also with the water and the seas, and everything is just connected. That's how we are as Native American people. So then I ended up going on the Paddle the Muckleshoot, which was a youth-led canoe journey. What ended up happening with that was pretty interesting, because we were brought down by other people. And with that, I started to fall back into my depression. And then I kind of just lost connection with it for a while. So then, after that, my mom was telling me that it was okay to take a break and that I was going to be all right. So then I took a break for maybe a couple weeks, and I didn't know what else to do. So then I started making cedar work. And I went up and I went to go gather, and then it's like I connected back with the earth. So I'm still here, Becky. I still love you, even though you forgot about me a couple times. But yeah, okay. So
Thank you, Tara.
I'm, as I said earlier, my name's Kara. I've been in the group for a while. I was there also when the canoe family started. I wasn't able to go on the journeys previous, except for last year's to Nisqually. And because of my medical conditions, I wasn't allowed to go. But our canoe skipper, Justin, he would always beg my mom, let me take Kara. She'd say no, and she would get mad at him. But he would nag her anyways. But my brother would be able to go. But when I finally got to go, I really connected with my culture spiritually, and I got to learn a lot of new stuff. I remember when I first went to gather cedar, I had no idea what I was doing until Becky was teaching me. Although I think she killed a tree that day.
Every time the kids share a story, it brings back a good memory. That's how come we keep laughing.
And so being part of the family is pretty fun. I learn something new every time. Like, I never knew how to paddle. I never knew how to weave, work with cedar. until I met Becky. And then when I met Justin, he taught me a lot of new things. He taught me how to make a paddle. And so, I don't know what else to say.
I want to help Kira and share a little bit about her. Kira has a lot of medical issues, and that's what always has prevented her. She has type 1 diabetes and other medical issues I don't really want to go in depth with. But this young woman is a warrior. All three of these women are warriors. Because each one of them have similar stories, but they're all the same. They have faced adversity, but they've become resilient by fighting it and overcoming it. In 2013, Kira lost her dad, and she was having a really hard time grieving. And Justin was one of the men in her life that helped her find ground. And all the other kids have very similar testimony, whether they come from a home where there's drug and alcohol abuse or there's domestic violence, they have found root in traveling on our canoe. We don't just call ourselves a Lummi Youth Canoe family because that's what every other tribe does. It's because we're actually family. Like, if there's a birthday, dude, we're all there celebrating it with them. Like, if one of them is getting an award, we're all there. I'm very excited, okay, personal. I'm graduating next year, so I'm very excited. I told everyone, I was like, you guys are all going to LA with me. And I think that's what makes this so close-knit. And so when the opportunity came up to go to Hawaii, people are on board. I don't let people go to a free trip to Hawaii and not put work in. And if you quit, you're talking to me, okay, because I'm not sitting here quitting even when things get tough for me. So what makes it okay for anyone else too? I have the I don't care what you're going through attitude. I have the attitude that you're going to overcome it, and we're going to be here with you. And that's the same thing that our tribal government faced at Cherry Point when people are saying, we're going to take your water and your land and turn it into a coal terminal. No, you're not. We value that land. That's our story of our people. And this is going to continue to be the story of our people. And same thing, we translate it into our children's lives. They have had a life, a foundation of struggle and adversity. People try to put them down and tell them they're not worthy. They found culture and they found sense of value, gained root, been nourished by elders all around us, and we're going to continue to fight for who we are. Because that's what makes us Lummi strong. In our language, Sithlin Quenquem, standing strong. So I just want to thank you guys for your time today, and then I hope to see most of your faces out tomorrow.
All right. This microphone, please. All right. Yeah, one more round of applause for these beautiful women up here. And we totally planned this out. We got up early this morning and met and worked this all out together. So I'm gonna be play a little bit of a moderator for hearing more of the experiences that they do have on the canoe journey. And what a beautiful way we planned our workshop this morning by emphasizing the canoe journey. Oh, there's the website. Okay, so that's the old website. So if you could go to the my PowerPoint and back to the two links that I had for the early learning, and click on the early learning link, and that'll bring you to the what I wanted to show. But that is our old website, just so everybody can see it. But I wanted to put into context the words that were shared today on the panel and how it relates to the work that we're all gathered here today to address, which is regarding climate change. And you're probably thinking, wow, they're talking a lot about this canoe journey. How is this related to climate change? And the way that I see it connecting is that it's emphasizing, what they're emphasizing in their own words, is the indigenous ways of knowing. And when we look at the title of the curriculum is Since Time Immemorial, Tribal Sovereignty in Washington State. And some of you may have heard that phrase before, it's of since time immemorial. Most commonly in more current times, it's referred to, taken from the treaty actually, that tribes signed with the federal government since time immemorial, acknowledging that tribes have been here since time immemorial. For as long as we can remember, as long as the rivers have run, as long as the sun set, tribal people have been here since time immemorial. And so it's important to acknowledge that that's the knowledge that you're getting here today in a sometimes funny way and sometimes tearful way. But what a real honor it is to sit here and listen to these stories of young ones who are carrying on our indigenous ways of knowing, our knowledge base. And I'm going to ask some questions about how they've experienced canoe journey. But before I do that, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how the canoe journey came to be. And it was cool to hear the story that one of the pullers had pulled with, or the canoe family had pulled with the Oliver family. And they referenced that they were from Seattle, which is where they live now. But the Oliver family is from Quinault. So it's great to have Tyson here as representative of the Quinault Nation, Indian Nation. And so back related to the Centennial Accord that I mentioned, that was created in 1989. Everybody remember that? So the Centennial Accord was this agreement between the state and the tribes. Also that year, my predecessor, Emmett Oliver, who was the first director of Indian education for the state of Washington, had retired, and the Washington State Centennial Celebration Committee invited him to participate as a part of the Washington State 100th anniversary as a representative of tribal nations in the state of Washington. And so they asked him to be a part of that committee. And so they asked him, what should we do to acknowledge the First Nations of Washington State as a part of the 100th anniversary of the state of Washington? And so Emmett had a really unique opportunity to represent the tribes and put something into the celebration. And he could have easily said, "Oh, well, let's have a big celebration where we play bingo, or let's have a big celebration where we do stick game, or let's have a big powwow, or let's have a big salmon feed or fry bread feed." But instead, he chose traveling canoes to acknowledge the traveling canoes and acknowledge our traditional highways, what we call Coast Salish, the Salish Sea, and that those were our traditional ways of traveling, and that we were all related, all of our tribes were related, even though we lived all these miles apart. We were all related to one another because our families would travel to different communities. And so we should acknowledge our traveling canoe, and that was in 1989. And at that time, traveling canoes had all but disappeared. Like, our communities weren't really using them. We had war canoes that still raced. There's a war canoe season throughout the summer, but we really didn't see a lot of the traveling canoes. And so we really credit and honor the Quinault Nation and Emmett Oliver for bringing back what we call the resurgence of our traveling canoes. And as a result of that, we see what we see here today on the panel, the refreshing of our youth voice to be really engaged in understanding our Indigenous ways of knowing. So I don't know if that makes you excited or not, but it makes me really excited to think about that. And we really owe a lot to our elders who have carried these things along as our knowledge base along, so that we can provide for our younger generations. And when we think about climate change, and when we think about since time immemorial, that is our response to climate change, or that's our real activism. We're thinking about stopping pipelines or coal terminals in our territories. Our best response is to insert our Indigenous ways of knowing, that we've been caretakers of this land since time immemorial, and that we know a lot about how this land should be taken care of, or how the water should be taken care of, and it needs to be acknowledged in the leadership. It needs to be acknowledged in the policy making, and so that's what we bring to the table. So thank you so much for the words today, and I had talked about earlier, and so I'm going to start the conversation now. I talked a little bit earlier about the three phases of what I see. There are three phases of canoe journey, and the first one being the preparation. And some of you talked about what that was like, mentioning like over harvesting the cedar and how that kills the tree. But tell me, can somebody or everybody tell me about what it's like to prepare for the canoe journey? What you're doing to, what are the actual things that you do when you're preparing for like the giveaway or the songs or the protocol that you share? And this happens like they've already started doing this. It happens as soon as the tribal journeys is over, they go back home, and then they begin the preparation for the next year.
Okay, so what we do is after canoe journey, we prepare for the next one, like right off the bat. Maybe we might get like 2 weeks off. But with that, then we have to start preparing for the giveaways, and then we have to memorize our songs like forward and backwards, and dances, oh my gosh. You can't start there. But it's mentally and physically preparing ourselves for the next canoe journey and understanding our waters and where we're going to be going. And then like maybe 2 weeks before we start looking at the weather to see like if we're going to have to hit like rough tides or anything else like that. But throughout all this time, we have to be in prayer. And we have to be thinking about the things that we could do and make it a goal and a dream.
Thanks.
Would you like to add anything, Nikki?
I want to add on with Tara's of what like our preparation. There are different times and seasons. The gathering, like during the winter, you could go out and like we'll go hunt for deer, elk, and then we'll we'll prep it for like little steaks or stuff for like so we could then freeze it so we could take it so it's still good for when we go on canoe journey, because we're on a budget when we go on canoe journey. And like there's different times of the seasons where like when the berries are good, and when we make giveaways we weave, so we'd have to like prep our wool so we could weave it into like a blanket or a sash. What else is there? There's around this time of the year we're able to go up into the mountains and get what are they? Stinger nettles, kind of, to make Devil's Club. And like during canoe journey, you're pulling like every day. We're pulling maybe like 10 miles a day, no matter what like the heat or any like the weather does not. there's times where we'll get up like at 4 in the morning just to hit the tide right, so we don't buck tide. And we get really exhausting. And Devil's Club is like this rub that you put on like your muscles, so you're not so tensed, and it like helps relieve the pain. What else is there?
What happens when you buck the tide? Tell us. Does everybody know what buck the tide means? I think they don't know.
Well, our first year, our skipper was like, "Oh, we don't have to leave with the rest of the canoe, rest of the families. We'll catch up." And we missed the tide, so when we're bucking the tide, we're going against the tide. So you have to pull 10 times harder, and yeah.
Right on. It's a little bit harder, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, thinking about the indigenous knowledge, our tribal ways of knowing, understand these tides. And so that's awesome to hear you talk about that. You learn your lesson, huh?
Yep.
You get up when you're supposed to get up and leave when you're supposed to leave.
Yep.
And what happens when you're, let's say, for example, can somebody explain what the giveaway is? Somebody's mentioned that a couple times. What is a giveaway?
So each location, a tribe is hosting us in honor for thanking them for hosting us, feeding us, and letting us stay on their land. Before we leave, we gift them a handmade gift, or to thank them. It's giving back to the community for hosting us. And when we get to our destination, this year we're going up to Cape Mudge, Campbell River up in Canada. We're gonna prepare giveaways. We are right now, and once we get up there, we have this big ceremony where each tribe gets to go up and perform in front of each other, just so we could watch them sing and dance. I don't know how to explain it, but for us, when we would get up and perform in front of everybody, after the performance or halfway through it, we'll stop and we'll call the tribal leaders and some of the different canoe family leaders down, and we're giving back for hosting us and welcoming us to stay there on their lands.
Do you want me to add on to that?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, for me, giveaways is a thank you. It's a haishka, which we say in Lummi language. But with that, we are giving away what we created with the land that we also collected it from. I'm really not sure how to word this. But it takes a lot of preparation to make giveaways. And it's a lot of work. And patience. Oh my gosh. A lot of patience you have to have for that. But yeah, it's kind of like an all year round thing where we have to collect certain things and then we have to prepare it for canoe journey, which is usually throughout. So we'll carry those around. So thank you. That's it.
Who taught you how to weave or collect cedar, or you talked about stinging nettle or devil's club? Who taught you how to work with all that?
Well, Tara's mom taught me how to make devil's club. Her mom's everything. She comes in a package. The weaving, Al Charles, he does he takes his time, takes the how do you say it? Time out of his busy schedule to come and spend time with the canoe family to teach us how to spin the wool, how to prep the weaving, how to prep the loom, the weave, and Becky for the cedar.
I have had a lot of great teachers in my lifetime. I've learned from 3 or 4 of our elders in the community, Floyd Warbis, Bill James, Ernestine Jensaw Blue. I know I'm missing one. I feel bad. But So how we've kind of set it up with our canoe family is we have a T for T model. So if I teach these 4 something, these 4 have to go out and teach 4 more, and they have to go and teach 4 more, and they have to go teach 4 more. So it's not just me and other elders doing all the work, and it works. It seems to work for us at least. I can't speak for everyone in our community, but what they're doing is they're retaining that information. So if I'm teaching Kira how to weave with wool, and she's teaching Tara how to weave with wool, and then she actually remembers it better. And they say that when you're weaving, okay, you're actually putting your thought process into your work. So if you screw up, what are you thinking? Dun, 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 dun. Oh, well. It's a healthy outlet. So that's, and then we have a really awesome commodity food program, and they've taught us how to do a lot of cooking. I can't cook. I like to burn buildings down and poison everyone. I laugh about it because I can't cook. And we work really close with our Lummi Stilanga department. Stilanga in our language is way of life. So we're really close with the director, and his name's Al Johnny, and Ted Solomon.
All right, so the second and third parts of the canoe journey, the actual pulls. So I heard somebody talk about 10-mile pull, or what goes on while you're on the water. What are you thinking about, and what have you learned being out on the water?
We pulled in our own waters. Okay, I'll start.
Oh, I don't know how to word it.
Okay, so I'm gonna start. Carlos kind of set the tone. We're just on our way from some tribe in Vancouver Island back in 2014, and it was an all-ladies crew. There was like 15 of us. And we get in our canoe, and we're pulling to this Canadian Army base, and they just let us sit on the shores. And it was actually that day we weren't really singing traditional Coast Salish songs. When we sing on the water, we're praying. We were singing hip-hop. I was singing hip-hop because I couldn't remember anything. And it was just easy in the mind, because when you're pulling, you're putting your thoughts and your energy on the water. But the waters that day were rough. I think we're going in 7-foot swells, and so were all the other canoes. It wasn't just the Lonely and Lummi canoe family. There was several, like 20, 30? And we were all getting ready to leave, and something happened. Big wave come in and flopped our girls over in the water. It was scary. It was a moment of scare. Like, we were so afraid because none of our men were with us. But I was so grateful for all the other canoes, because they took our girls up from the water and basically saved their life. I can't say every experience is like that, but I think that one's the most memorial. I memorized that moment because it became the most spiritual. We're pulling some days 33 miles, some days like 10 or 15 miles, and you're not quitting. You quit, then your partner's carrying that weight for you. And like, if you're like 200 pounds and we have 120 pound over here trying to pull your weight, they're pulling 320 pounds. Like, you don't give up. That's just what's up.
With my experience with pulling, I actually have a medical condition that kind of prevents me from pulling for long periods of time. So I do pause a lot, but there are times where I push myself a little bit harder. but it's more of like, when I have pain, I don't say, oh, well, I guess I can't do it now. Instead, I say, okay, a little bit longer, and I'll keep going. I'll just keep having positive thoughts. And then when I see someone else stop and they're tired and I'm on my break, I'll say, hey, you need a break? And I'll take over for them, even though I just got on like break. Or like someone starts complaining, because I've heard people complaining about their pain, I'll just say like, just a little bit longer, a little bit faster, keep going. I remember when I first started out, I was constantly pausing, and Becky would yell at me all the time. And Justin would be like, Becky, stop yelling at her. And then he was like, he would always encourage me to just keep pulling. So, like, whenever I was pulling on those days, it was more of like, I felt like I could pull harder and go faster.
I want to add on to that story of Becky's, because I was one of those girls that flipped. That day was probably like the last day I pulled that year. Like, I was terrified to go back in the water because it was just all girls day, and then we had our sport boat skipper, and he's like, oh, let's go into shore on his little dinky skiff, like 5 of us on there. And then we got yelled at, and so Sue Oliver, she was skipping the girls that day, and she was like, oh my God, you guys go back to the sport boat. So like, here we are, barely moving, going back to the sport boat, and that big swell came in, like flooded us, and all of us went under. But then a couple days before that, it was just a mixture of us, and our late skipper Justin Finkbond, and we hit tide just right, so we're ahead of everybody, and we saw this little water park. Yeah, we went there and we crashed that place. It was a party going on. There's days where it's really we're on time, and we find trouble to go get into.
All right. Oh, go ahead. You have something?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So my experiences this last canoe journey were pretty interesting. So we had these really long poles a lot last year. And for me, pulling is my healing. Because when I'm pulling, I actually don't really think about anything. Everything just zones out. And I would come back, and, my mom was with the canoe family, and she'd be like, oh my God, you're sunburnt. I'm beet red and everything, right? My blisters and everything else. But there was this thing that she kept saying. She's like, oh no, put some Devil's Club on it, which all you girls know. Yep. So with that, it was like, okay, well, if I keep pushing, then I'm going to incline in this. So I remember this one time, it was full-on fog, like this morning, Becky. And I was actually Becky's partner in this pool. It was fog, you couldn't see anything. And we could barely see the people that were actually pulling alongside us. So we lost them a couple times, and we had to start singing for them. But that was the most memorable one, because it just felt like everything was gone. And that it was just us, the water, and the fog. So.
That's so awesome. So I think we're going to open it up for some questions, because I know you all have some questions out there.
I thought I would help facilitate on that. Let's give them all a big hand again, right? It takes a lot of courage to be able to come up and speak to people that they don't know, and so I think they're very courageous, and I know personally I'm just very proud of their ability to come and do this and share their stories with us. Are there any people in the audience that would like to ask a question? And we have a microphone.
Microphone that's live? Yes, we do.
Yeah. So I think there's a question in the back. In the back? Oh, okay.
I'd like to tell you, young people, how proud I am of you. Doing a canoe journey I look at it as a spiritual lesson too. And to show your emotions, it's okay to show that. It's okay to show, what you're learning, because that's part of your growing up. When I first spoke, I spoke at they call it a colloquium. It was in California. It was in the 60s, and it was really the hippie era. And my mother had me get up and do this 10 strings of wampum of the Iroquois Nation. And as I'm doing that, I could hear my voice just quiver like that. And she'd push me on the back and say, quit doing that. And so I'd take a deep breath and, talk. But I think what you're doing is really good for your healing. And the spirituality of being on the water, being in that canoe, singing your songs, beating the drum, paddling. To me, that's a spiritual journey that all our young people are going through right now, because we kind of lost that way. But you're bringing it back. So I just want to thank all of you for your words today. Thank you.
I saw some questions over here. Yeah.
Thank you guys very much for your presentation. And I have a question related to the Since Time Immemorial curriculum. I was curious if you have the numbers for how many schools or what percentage of schools across the state have adopted it. And I was also curious about your process for getting schools to adopt the curriculum.
Great, thank you. That's a great question. So it's a state mandated curriculum, and when you look at the curriculum, it's a supplemental curriculum, so it's made to be a part of a district's current social studies curriculum. So in that sense, we don't have a real, there's not an assessment that tests for it or anything like that. So data-wise, we don't have numbers that show whether it's been implemented into a district or not. But we've had school districts that have formally adopted it. There's 3 in the state that have formally adopted it, and then we have numerous schools that have implemented it, like school-wide, where all of the social studies teachers come together and kind of plan out how it's going to be implemented throughout all grades. And in terms of implementation, our office is mainly in charge of providing training. So in the last 2 years, our trainings have doubled in size and frequency. And so I'm not sure if that kind of answers your question or whatnot. Yeah.
Were there other questions up front?
Gonna get your Fitbit steps in today.
I want to thank you for how wonderful you spoke today. I also want to thank you for the paddle, because I was down there that day when you came in to the Squally, and it was so awesome to see the canoes come around the point, one after another. And you remember it was sunny, and that water was glistening on the paddles they were jewels. And because all these other people, there were thousands of us down there in the bleachers, we had all this awe seeing you and just it was awesome. What was it like for you when you came in? How does it feel to end your journey for this year? And how is it for you to see all these people welcoming you? Or are you even aware that we're in the bleachers?
Okay, well, for me, personally, I was really exhausted, and I was just trying to get out, right? And when I saw everybody there, I was just amazed with how many people showed up to support us. And, we had to sit on what was that called? Yeah, the docks. And we had to wait for it felt like hours. And, you know, we had like this one porta potty. Everybody was like getting out, running everywhere, right? And I was like, oh no, I'm just gonna stay here. I could wait. And when we finally pulled in, it was like, wow, this is actually over. Not fully, but it was, journey-wise. And it was amazing to finally hit our destination and to share our culture and songs with everybody. So thank you for asking that.
Oh, he's in the back there.
Thank you guys for coming out here also. It's really important what you guys are doing. So for this curriculum, are you planning on bringing Native elders in to teach the proper history on the Natives' perspective, at least?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for that. And it is something that's considered in the law. So in the first part of the law, it talks about teaching about tribal history, culture, and government. And then the second part of the law, to enhance or supplement the curriculum, school districts are encouraged to partner with the closest federally recognized tribe to help with enhancing the curriculum and making it relevant to the area that that the school exists. So we have examples of that, like Edmond School District has partnered with both Tulalip tribes and also Snohomish tribes. And so they've developed a district-wide adoption of the curriculum. So they convened all of their social studies teachers within the district, reviewed on where they would apply the different units as a part of the curriculum. And then our office actually helped facilitate a few meetings between what we like to do is start at the highest level. So we start with the superintendent of a district and the tribal council. And so while we're having these meetings about the adoption process of the curriculum, we invited one of the Tulalip council members to attend a meeting to talk about, or to first observe what the district was doing, and then kind of respond to that, and then request to meet with the Tulalip Tribes Board of Directors. And so that's the general idea of how we partner with tribes. And a lot of that is wrapped up in the government-to-government relations that's in the Centennial Accord. So we try to follow that protocol as much as possible.
There was a question right here. I don't know where the microphone is.
A question, we'll get you. I've seen.
Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. I'm wondering if any of the tribal governments have any environmental testing, chemical testing, and if there's ways to share that knowledge so that we know if there's anyone polluting illegally.
Oh, you already know the answer to that. But one of the things I'll highlight, since we have this theme of the tribal journeys going on, is that we did have a few, probably started like at least 5 years ago, partnership between the tribes that participate in tribal journeys and NOAA, and a few state entities, but partnered with canoe families to carry water quality. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but the monitors of water on the canoes, and they basically towed them along. One, it had GPS on there, so it was kind of tracking how the canoes were traveling in the tides and whatnot, but it also tracked the water quality of the water that couldn't be captured in by means of like a motorboat that also pollutes the water as it's going along. So we have these partnerships that are useful and beneficial for both the tribes and the entities that want to partner. And I think that that's the main thing that we want to emphasize, is that these partnerships really need to be meaningful and considerate of both the tribes and the organization that wants to partner.
I also think that there are tribes like the Chehalis tribe that I believe is also looking at the water quality and determining their own standards. They're setting as sovereign nations. They're deciding, along with other tribes, they're deciding to set their own water quality standards. And if the water coming in to their territory does not meet that standard, then they have then the data and the ability to then go back to the states and say, we need the water quality to be at this level in order for us to sustain our fish and our food needs, that our diets that depend on these fish. Because instead of just eating one fish a month, Native people often eat fish 2 or 3 times a week, if not more. And we've been told not to eat the fish sometimes because of all of the things that are inside of the fish. So there are certainly tribes that are starting to look at their power of sovereignty to use that in ways to try and get the states to try and raise their level of water quality. I don't know if any of them have taken them to court yet, but I know that that's kind of something that's a possibility in the future. So just so to kind of answer that question a little bit.
Guy in the green shirt has been dying to ask a question.
I was just curious about what part of the Devil's Club plant was used as a topical for mussels and sunscreen.
Why do you guys look at me?
The inside part. Hey.
Yes, I know. Okay, so what happens is you go get the Devil's Club, and Devil's Club is like a tall branch, okay, and it's spiky. So you better be wearing gloves, and you better have something that chops that, and then have a knife and cut all the spikes off. So what you do is you start cutting that bark with the knife, and you start peeling it, and the medicine's on the inside. And has a really strong scent. And I'm not just saying that. It can definitely make your entire car smell like it. But it's good.
Are you a scientist, a ethnobotanist? Okay. We'll trade. We'll trade knowledge.
We only have time for one more question, sorry.
Okay.
Are you sure? Oh, I feel really special for that. Thank you. My name is Tyson, and I want to thank you all for your words and comments today. They deeply moved and inspired me. I really appreciated you being vulnerable enough to share your experiences so openly with this community here. It's very powerful, and I think it's carrying really deep teachings. I knew Justin personally. He was my friend, and I really appreciated you honoring his memory today, too. And he worked with me as a young person, and so he has affected my life in a lot of positive ways, and he talked fondly of a lot of the work that was going on in Lummi Nation. And so to see you all be here and be the products of some of the work he did is very powerful. I really appreciated what you said about how society and our educational system that's modeled after it is this square, whereas a lot of our communities and indigenous ways of knowing are circular. And the reason for that is because by living in that circle, we protect and bring in those people that are excluded, the ones that are suffering from depression, that have those mental health issues and other ailments. And I really appreciated you talking about that today, and I was wondering, what message do you have for those of us in our different roles in society that are struggling with those issues to, I guess, carry on and moving forward? You talked about having that ability to keep going and not giving up, and I really like that, but I think all of us in our own way struggle with that, and I was hoping maybe you all would maybe share a closing message on how those of us that struggle with those issues can continue on. Seal Quill.
No, you guys can.
Well, the closing message that I have is that there's always, you always have a chance, and there's always an opportunity that you can take. And, well, you're not going to fully recover, but there's always a moment where you can at least attempt, I guess. Kiki, you want to go?
I don't really have anything to say. You want me to go? Sure. Okay, I'll go. I was at a conference in Arizona, and I met this really awesome psychologist. And he said, did you know that people that don't have 5 to 7 people surrounding their lives and supporting them through everything fall through the fringe and the cracks of life? And I just sat there and I said, that's no way. And he was like, yes way. And it was funny because we actually did a drill, and we all got in a circle and we started tying strings to each other's fingers, and we blew up balloons. And we resembled the balloons as people. And the strings and all the tangled part of life that we're all part of, we started seeing balloons falling. So down on the cracks is the depression, down on the cracks is the high anxiety, the sense of fear of failure or not being good enough to meet what social media puts out there as perfect. So when I think I heard that message when I was 19. I'm only 26, and that's a message I carry forward to all these kids. These kids don't have 7 people in their lives that can help them through everything. Then that's my #1 goal. So let's start finding you people. I may or may not be one of those 7 people. I don't know. I'm sure if you talk to them on their free time, they will tell you who. But make it almost a mandatory requirement, because I do not ever want to set people up for fail. I think that's one of my homework assignments to you is, if you're not connected, get connected. And if you're scared, bring a friend. If you don't have any friends, find someone that you admire or you look up to as a role model, because they will help you.
Okay, I have several little notes, but besides that, there's something that I think is really important that we want to do, which is we have some students, it looks like maybe Claire Alport, and if you could come up. We would like to gift, in the tradition of potlatch and canoe journeys, we would like to gift each of the presenters today with gifts made by Alma Barton of the Makah Nation. And so Claire will be gifting those to the speakers.
Thank you.
And we want to again thank everybody for their presentation. And oh, what's that? Just keep it for right now. And I have some announcements, but before I do, I want us to give another hand to the speakers. So I have a couple of announcements. One, if people haven't registered, please stop by the table and register. Let's see, for lunch, if you look on the schedule, in the place where it says dinner, there are places that you can go if you're not familiar with the campus, and there are maps on the table to kind of show you where to go for that. As well, during the lunch break, the bookstore here is selling the book Asserting Native Resilience on Tribal Responses to Climate Change. So with that, I am going to say thank you to the speakers once more and let you go for lunch. We start again, we resume at 1:30. 1:30, right? Thank you very much.